Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for May's Town Hall tonight. I want to first start by thanking the Lutheran Church of the Good Shepherd for hosting us and allowing us to utilize this space for tonight's Town Hall. As many of you know, we love anytime we get the opportunity to invite our colleagues at the local and state level to join us at our town halls. And tonight we are very lucky to have Edina Mayor James Hoagland, State Representative Jamie Long, and City Council Member Lene Palmasan. So before I get to my update from what is happening in DC and the things that we are able to do here in the district office, I would like to take an opportunity to invite some of our leaders to give some updates themselves. I will start with the mayor. Please help me welcome Mayor James Hoagland.
And all of you as well. Welcome to the broad neighborhood. And part of Edina is in the 5th Congressional District. So, and as mayor, suburban mayor in the 5th, we kind of end up being a little sub-cabinet, kitchen cabinet for the Congress and meet several times a year with our issues that are important to all of us. And so, as you can well imagine, the issues that affect our cities are the same ones that are affecting you individually. And so we're trying to the Congressman and others feedback that we think is important relative to important issues like we just faced this winter with immigration enforcement. Our views on that. I was on the panel at the U.S. Conference of Mayors in January, asked to be there with the mayor of Portland, the mayor of Brownsville, Texas, mayor of Denver, and Jacob High was supposed to visit us too. It was a critical time for him. He was able to speak that noon. And then I had a couple weeks to get my remarks prepared, so I was ready for that. And those have been well received around the country, republished, and will start to view. So that's an important issue that we've been working on. And then an issue that's global in nature, that so many parts of the world are affected by is housing affordability and production. And so many of us are now heading off next week to the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting, the annual meeting this year is in Long Beach. And that will be on the forefront of everything there. And then I'm also the chair of the Standing Committee on Transportation for the U.S. Conference of Mayors. So transportation infrastructure issues will be looming large as well. In the immediate sort of neighborhood that Lene and I kind of share across France Avenue, a lot of good things going on in Edina. We've got, during COVID we had a breakdown in office occupancy, but the only two corporate headquarters that are being built in the state of Minnesota right now are being built in Edina. One on France Avenue and one over across the highway right by the hilltop. So we've got some good things going on from a land use standpoint and other things as well. And I'm just pleased to be here, pleased to be asked to join you, and it's always good to be with her. And look forward to the conversation here this evening because it will not only affect the Neapolitans but Edinans as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. Next we will have Representative Jamie Long.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Great to be with you all. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. So we just wrapped up the legislative session a couple of weeks ago, so I got a little bit of sleep, but still kind of coming out of a difficult 2 years. We were, for those who are tracking very closely, we were in a tie in the Minnesota House. Only the second time in state history that we were second year of our 2-year biennium. It's not typically a budget year. We do 2-year budgeting, and so anything that we were going to do, we had to do together. And so even in that tough context, we were able to get some important things done. I think the most important to me personally was that we were able to save HCMC, the Hennepin County. That was not a foregone conclusion. That was something that took a lot of hard work, and I was just there last week visiting with physicians and staff, and nurses who work there. They were incredibly grateful for what we were able to achieve. We got them access to over $700 million to help stabilize the hospital, and we need to do more. There was a short-term $200 million, which is just cash for them. They get to put to use now, and they have access to an additional fund in the future. But we do need to come back next year to try to help this really critical public safety net hospital, which is so important to our region and our state, and we're committed to doing that. The other thing I'm really proud that we got done is that this fall, on your ballot, you're going to have the opportunity to vote on a constitutional amendment to increase school funding at no cost to taxpayers. I saw an article about it yesterday, which was like, is this too good to be true? There really is no such thing as pretty much. It turns out we have school trust lands in the state that are held in trust for our schools and school districts, and we have invested over time the proceeds that have come to that fund, but we can't actually put that to use right now. So this amendment would allow the investments and the gains that have been made over time to go back to school districts, and that would double the amount of funding that is coming to school districts, which would make it really yes, you can see that on your ballot this fall, which I'm hoping folks will. And then I'll just share 2 disappointments that we had from this session. The first is that we weren't able to take strong action in the House on gun violence prevention. And a number of us I know have been closely impacted by tragedy in an unsafe school. We fought very hard to try to take action on a comprehensive gun violence prevention package at the Capitol. The good news is that for the very first time, the Senate passed a ban on assault weapons and a ban on high-capacity magazines for the first time in history. And that was a really important vote, a really important milestone. Before session, we heard, well, the Senate doesn't have the votes, they can't even do it. And they did. They showed that they had the votes. Unfortunately, that bill came over to the House and then disappeared. It was never released. It was never sent Congresswoman Omar and everyone gathered here tonight, good evening everyone. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. Please accept the greetings and my gratitude to Congressmember Ilhan Omar for bringing our community together. I'm proud to represent the Senate District alongside Congresswoman Omar and Representative Jamie Long at a time when people across the country are anxious about affordability, democracy, gun violence, healthcare, and the paramilitary invasion and occupation of our city. I believe Minnesotans continue to be the shining example of what showing up for each other looks like and what fighting for the common good looks like. This legislative session, we worked hard to protect and strengthen the things that matter most to all of us. We secured critical support for ACMC, helped deliver property tax relief, strengthened protections against fraud and abuse, defended democracy and elections, invested in infrastructure, expanded housing and rental assistance, advanced HOA reform, and provided additional energy assistance for families struggling with costs. We also respond to extraordinary challenges facing our communities, and though blocked by Republicans, we work to support cities and businesses harmed by aggressive federal actions and to reinforce clear standards and protections around arrest, public safety, and constitutional rights. Everything we do at the legislature is because of people and communities who organize, advocate, vote, and stay engaged. It happens because leaders like Congresswoman Omar and Representative Long continue to bring courage, moral clarity, and a fierce commitment to justice and human dignity to public life. Thank you all for being here tonight, for caring about your neighbors and your community, and for continuing the work of building a Minnesota and a country where everyone can thrive. Fairly, truly yours, Senator Dibble. Thank you all for
Thank you, Representative Long and Senator Dibble. Next, we will hear from City Council Member Ilhan Omar.
Hi everybody, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for this space. The last time I was in this space was about a year ago. It was my son's piano recital. And I was in charge of beverages. But I'm here tonight we are finally able to get to a place of getting back to it, and I will just offer that for now, it was a really good, really honest day of strategic planning. I'm looking forward to what comes from that. But this isn't a city hall, town hall, it's Congresswoman Ilhan Omar, so I will get right over to her. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Cian Palmisano. Cian Palmisano was elected when I was an aide at City Hall, so I can't even believe our kids are old enough to have recitals, because they were just little infants trying to learn how to crawl in those hallways. Special thank you to the three of them for joining us tonight, for giving their updates in CD5. We believe in co-governance, and it's been really an incredible honor to work with you all on all the different levels in which we represent our constituents collectively, because not only one person is not able to do this work on one level, it needs all of us. And so again, thank you all. Please give them one more applause. As many of you know, we do these town halls every single month. At last month's town hall, we were still not able to come together to an agreement to open the one department that was shut down, which was the Department of Homeland Security. We wanted to make sure that there was no additional funding going to ICE and CBP. Our Republican counterparts in the House kept refusing, even though there was an agreement in the Senate that was sent to us. They sent us to recess without actually taking that vote. But luckily they came to their senses once we were back in DC, and we were able to pass legislation to help open back up the Department of Homeland Security, which means TSA, our Coast Guard staff, FEMA, national security, all of the other sub-departments outside of ICE and CPP were able to get their resources. Now they're coming back with another reconciliation bill, which means it is filibuster proof in the Senate that will include $1.1 million extra for ICE. That's one thing that we are fighting against, as well as $1 million for the ballroom that Trump apparently wants. We were previously told that it would be privately funded, and now they're saying they want money for that. We've been fighting to find a resolution to the illegal war that the Trump administration started in Iraq, that has just exacerbated the cost of living issues that many of our constituents have been dealing with across the country. They continue to say they're close to a deal, but the kind of deal that they say they have is going to be worse than the deal we had under Obama, without accounting for the numerous numbers of people that have been killed since the war has started. I am running through this because normally we have more than 30 minutes for Q&A, so I'm going to shorten some of my updates so I can answer your questions. Lastly, I want to talk about Cian Palmisano gave Nikki a shout out. Our whole staff, I think, is in the office. If you all can stand and wave. Like every day, we create some emergencies. Although it might be a difficult environment, it is our duty to make sure that we do everything that we can to help. Congressional casework involving ICE 333 1272. And lastly, my staff has helped over 1,000 constituents with issues like Social Security, immigration, taxes, healthcare, and more. Our team was able to return $4.8 million to constituents, businesses, and organizations in the district. So we're very grateful for that. And this year, just to make sure people know that we are here being their liaison, we are helpful to them. We have billboards across the district that has our phone number and the issues that we mostly work on. So if you see one of those billboards, share with a friend that might not know some of the issues that we work on so that we can help them. With that, I will take some of your questions. A staff member will come around with the mic, and as usual, do not punch the mic. Hold it, and we will answer your question. All right, we will start right here, Ali, next to me.
Hi, I was just wondering what's happening with Trump's slush fund, and when he's going to use to pay off all of his cowboy guys and all the rest of them, where they're on generations.
Yeah, so that's the $1.2 billion that they want allocated to the people who committed an insurrection against our country, and I think it is really ridiculous. We are seeing not just Democrats, 1.8, someone to write it, $1.8 billion. We are seeing opposition not just from Democrats, but from Republicans. Many Republicans in the Senate and in the House are vowing to make sure that we are not voting to have that money be appropriated. It is illegal for the federal government to allocate money that we have not appropriated for a specific issue like that. So we are fighting it tooth and nail, and we will make sure that they do not get a single penny to be able to pay off these people. I know people forget nothing.
A concern and a question. My concern is that so many state legislatures in recent weeks have engaged in redistricting processes that have functionally allowed Congress people to choose their voters rather than the other way around. This being true of states controlled by both parties. My question to you: should your party recover the majority in Congress this coming fall, how much energy are you willing to commit to a bill to require all states to set up nonpartisan commissions for redistricting following the 2030 census?
Well, as someone who proudly represents the one state that is not gerrymandered, I will say I am committed to that, and so are Democrats. When we passed our Democracy Act in 2019, that, what you just asked about the commission to redistrict, was one of the cornerstones of that piece of legislation that we passed. So there is a commitment from our side, and if you've noticed, Democrats, when they've done redistricting, they put it on the ballot. Republicans, when they've done redistricting, they themselves were the ones who took the vote in the House and the Senate in those chambers. And so there is a commitment to fulfilling that kind of democracy and guaranteeing that the people are the ones that are selecting who represents them, and not the candidates who are selecting the people that will eventually be their constituents.
Town. I was at a Minnesota Civic District open house last night, and was initially surprised to see a couple of state troopers there. I should not have been surprised by that. I know that they are there in response to what happened to Elizabeth Hortman and her husband, that the tragic failure of gun control provisions at the state level has made that a common problem for many of us. And I just want to say, I want to just tell you that I believe you are the bravest person alive. I know that you and I and many of the constituents here share the same values. It is not easy sometimes to speak out for what should happen instead of what is happening. And so I just wanted to say very deeply, thank you.
I can speak for Jamie, but a lot of us who knew and worked and loved Melissa Portman. It hasn't been easy. And as the anniversary of her assassination nears, it is it's a challenge every day to try to, wake up to want to serve your neighbors, knowing that there are people who are out there who don't only wish that you were not in office, but that you were not on this earth. And it is a sad reality that words like what you just spoken are encouraging and I'm grateful. Thank you.
Here today. So I'm loving the brochure and reading through it sitting here and reading how your office can help. I'm curious how you and your office can help the disabled community in Minnesota right now with the attacks on, quite frankly, the ridiculous fraud claims for Minnesota and how that's affecting disability services. We have disabled people losing housing, ending up homeless. We've had lots of PCAs going 3+ months without getting paid this year. That's how they pay to live. That's how they buy groceries. That's how they drive their kids to appointments. So I'm curious if you can speak on how your office can help protect us.
No, thank you for that question. Generally, obviously, we support legislation that is helpful to people that are living with disability in not just in our district but across the country. But when it comes to constituent services, one of the ways that we can help is that if you're having resources being withheld that is supposed to be for you, if you contact our office, we'll make sure those resources are released so that you have what you need. And so that's the same for all the casework that we do. You give us permission to advocate on your behalf. If your SSI is not, SSDI is not coming in, we will make sure that you're getting those funds. If you have the PCA and they're struggling and trying to figure out how to do that, we can work with them to try to make sure that that's helping. We've got Medicaid, Medicare access issues, so we can work with that. There's a lot of people with disabilities that live in public housing, that's federal, so we can help with that. So anything that is federal that is tied to resources that you're individually supposed to have access to, we can help with that outside of the big picture advocacy that we are able to do. So that's what the casework in the brochure is on.
What numbers did she call?
It's on there.
I just want you to say it again.
Oh, say it now. I have to look. 612-333-1272. We got a note from Eugene Haya, district director. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right. We're always time sensitive because they only allow
Hi, Congressman. Thank you for being here and being regard. I think we've talked about a bunch of important issues, but the biggest one in my eyes, and I know a lot of other people's eyes, is very salient right now, is it's very hot outside. It's very cold in here. And you've been very clear on this in the past, but I don't want us to forget that the world's burning and that we need action on everything, climate change. What can you say for when progressives do retake the reins of power in this country? What can we do to not just go back to where we were on sitting on climate change, but to get a progressive, positive message out there?
That's a really good question. You know, we were able to make a huge progress through the Biden administration in addressing the climate crisis. It was, I think, not just for progressives, but for a lot of us who have been climate and environmental advocates. It was a really proud moment that we were able to get the president adopt our agenda and be proud to. And as soon as the Trump administration came in, you know, they are going after it piece by piece. We just put out our affirmative agenda as a progressive caucus to what we will do when we get back into office. I serve, as you know, the deputy chair of the progressive caucus. So I would love for you to take a look at that. That's kind of what we are currently working to sanitize with the rest of our caucus. And the ones that we think will be joining us to try to make sure that we go as bold as we can, because we understand that the American people are, you know, sick and tired of people making promises and not following through with it. And I was especially proud when, you know, we went out there before the trifecta here in Minnesota, and we made a list of things that the Minnesota legislature and our governor were going to be able to do if we didn't have the trifecta. And I can't tell you just how exciting it was to be in Washington, D.C. and to watch Jamie and Melissa and everyone go to work going through that list. And that's kind of what we have right now. We have a list that we want to go through and accomplish on behalf of the people we rolled it out 2 weeks ago. And we're excited to make sure that we win, you know, the support of our colleagues. As Jamie knows, you can have an affirmative agenda, but if everyone is not on board, you're not going to be able to be successful. So thank you for that. And then you're able to get
Hi. As someone who is trying to become more politically active in pushing against this current presidential administration and also holding them more accountable, what are actions beyond voting that you have seen be most successful as of recent?
Well, I mean, one is having a conversation with your neighbors. Many people are busy going about their lives. Not every neighborhood that we do a town hall in has this many people in it. So, you know, a lot of people they know what is happening to them, but they're not paying attention why it's happening to them. Many people don't know the tools that are at their disposal to advocate for themselves, and to advocate for that better world that they want around themselves. And so having those smaller conversations with folks. When I was a young organizer, I used to do these gatherings, media representative gatherings, for my neighbors, where I would bring the school board member, the city council member, the county commissioner, their state rep, their state senator. And I think Keith Ellison, my predecessor, our attorney general, eventually stole my idea and blew it up. It was really cool. I was excited for it. But it was those small moments where people were like, oh, so the school budget is designed, you know, and voted by the school board. I didn't know that. I thought that was the mayor's thing. I thought that was, you know, so changes, people tend to then understand that, all politics is local. They understand how, people will say, I don't do politics, and I always tell them, but politics does you. And so, understanding the impact that it has on your life, and who are the players who are impacting you. Oftentimes people ask me, does writing letters and calling help? Yes, every morning we get a readout of the number of calls we got on a specific issue or a specific bill or an amendment. We get a readout of how many letters are coming in, what the topics are, and we move accordingly. If someone is calling in about an issue that's happening in one of my municipalities, as soon as I land, that's the first place I'm going. And so that's, we are supposed to be representatives, and that's usually how we make our decisions on what issues are going to be a priority in that particular moment. And so, yes, practicing writing those letters and making those phone calls. Sometimes people are nervous. Suddenly call at night if you don't want to talk to a live person. You're just leaving a voicemail, and it's less nerve-wracking thing for you to be able to do. I hope that helps. There's one more here.
Hi, I also just want to thank you for your fighting spirit. It's really appreciated. And I really need that. I also wanted to ask you kind of where you stand with your fellow progressives, Bernie and AOC, on, I think they put forth a bill for a moratorium on these AI data centers. So I know a lot of us are really worried about this, and just what your thoughts are on that, or if you're joining them on that, if there's any hope for that moratorium. I know that's also going on the local level here. We've got another vote coming for a workforce moratorium, I think in June, so just wondering about that.
That's a good question. I know that Minneapolis had an initial vote out of one of the committees that would create a 6-month moratorium. I cannot remember the details on the one that Alex and Bernie have. I support initially a short-term moratorium just so that we can get a handle and slow it down. We get lots and lots of briefings in Congress about the environmental impacts, and then we get lots and lots of briefings on the fact that there isn't environmental impacts from places like Virginia, right, which is known as the headquarter of the most data centers, I think, around the world. And so there is still a lot of research and stuff, a lot of studying that still has to be done. And so I do support having some sort of stoppage so that we can get a full understanding of what it means for us to fully stop and what it means for us to move slowly into the future. And I know that in Minnesota there's one city that is currently considering it. It hasn't, we're not Virginia or Arizona or any of the other states that have a lot of it pop up. What do you know?
Thank you again for coming. But my question is about the Supreme Court. And is there any momentum for changing the Supreme Court who is elected versus appointed to prevent them from being weaponized as they are in our current administration? Because when the administration previously refused to allow Obama to appoint so that they could bring in more conservative justices because the court that we currently have. So is there any momentum in looking at that as an option for the future
That is not a, no one has ever asked me. I don't think that's ever been something I've seen brought up. I know that there is few bills to expand the court. I know that there are a few bills that I'm signed on to that in a retirement or term limit. So I've seen those, I'm signed on to most of those. I've not seen one where judges are actually been appointed like we have for our state Supreme Court judges, where they would be on the ballot, and have restrictions on who can support them. That's a really an interesting thing to think about. But we also have states where their Supreme Court races are not as restrictive as ours, but what can a campaign you can do, or how much outside money can be spent to support you. You remember Wisconsin and the amount of money Musk was spending in that Wisconsin race. I'm glad we were able to beat them in that. But yeah, so I mean, if we were to make it an elected body, then we would have to really think hard on ways that we can prevent any special interest groups from being able to support them. We would have to sort of almost become like the rest of the world, where we limit the length of your campaign season, because we uniquely in America have no limits on how long you are campaigning and how much money you can spend, and that really is severely dangerous to having a democracy that is for the people and of the people. So yeah, a lot to think about. We'll take right there. our hope, you know, we were very angry as the delegation in the House that it was a Minnesota member that introduced, advocated, and passed that legislation to allow mining to take place in our beautiful boundary waters. I feel like it's sacred. There's so many of us who consider it sacred, and it was actually so bad that we had these young Minnesotans who came to visit us. They sat in the steps, and a lot of us in the delegation went to go say hi. We stepped up one by one. Kelly Morrison, who some of you might know, who represents the third, was before me. She spoke to like 5 or 6 questions. This was between votes. And then I came in and I answered a few of their questions. And the one next to me was Congressman Pete Stauber. And as soon as they introduced him, the young kids started booing. And I was like, these are proper Minnesotans. And so the anger is understandable. My eldest daughter goes hiking and canoeing there every single summer with her friends. And she's done that for the last 8 years that she's been able to go on her own. And so to answer your question, yes. And we've been thinking about strategically, because we will still have a Trump president. Hopefully, when we do get the majority in the House and in the Senate, how do we negotiate? Where does it go for us to be able to repeal that? So that is something that we are already strategizing about, and it is reversible. So thank you so much for that question. Thank you all so much for joining us for this month's town hall, and I look forward to seeing you in June for our town hall.
You're a coward. And everybody who supports you is anti-American. They hate America. They're destroying our country.
You're anti-American.
I'm the only one with the courage to stand up for the truth here. All the rest of you are cowards.
You're anti-American.
You're cowards.
You're just a big...
We're all Americans.
We're
all Americans. We can all have our own say.
Did I uncover fraud or not?
Yes,
Was the
you
fraud
did.
real?
Yes, you did.
Thank you.
Smaller than you could ever have.
What did you do? Did I uncover fraud? Yes. And now it's spread throughout the whole country.